One chapter of American history that receives little attention in our modern history classes and textbooks is the French and Indian War. The French and Indian War was part of the 7-Year War between England and France, which saw battles erupt across the globe from Europe to America, and even as far away as India. Officially, the 7-Year War took place from 1756 to 1763, although the fighting in North America was from 1754 to about 1760. The French and Indian War was one of the key events that led to the American Revolutionary War. The events leading up to the French and Indian War and the events that took place during the French and Indian War have much to teach us about our own situation today. To neglect these lessons, especially today, is extremely dangerous. One of the main causes of the French and Indian War was Roman Catholic imperialism. The Pope was interested in obtaining a Catholic monopoly in the Western Hemisphere. Canada, Central America, and South America were already Catholic. The only Protestant section of the Western Hemisphere resisting the political and economic rule of the Pope was the English-speaking colonies of North America. If the Pope could conquer these colonies, or at least stop them from spreading beyond the Appalachian Mountain Range, then he could dominate the entire Western Hemisphere. To carry out this papal plan, the Catholic nation of France began setting up a series of forts from Canada to the Gulf of Mexico in an attempt to stop the English Protestants, specifically the Scotch-Irish Presbyterians, who were Calvinists, from advancing beyond the Appalachian Mountains. The forts would control the Mississippi River, and they would be strategic locations for launching attacks into the English colonies. Historian Daniel Marston, Ph.D. Oxford, writes, "The establishment of Fort Beauséjour in the disputed area was the last straw, as this made it apparent to the British colonists that the French had them surrounded. They were not being paranoid. The French did in fact intend to construct a series of forts from Louisbourg to New Orleans, enclosing the British colonies. The hostility between the two countries was near to breaking point." The French-Indian War, 1754-1760, page 11. What Dr. Marston fails to convey is one of the main reasons these English-speaking colonists would be so upset with this development. For that reason, one has to turn to much older books on the history of the United States. John C. Miller's History on the Origins of the American Revolution, published in 1943, explains why the English-speaking Protestants of colonial America were so upset with the French. Miller writes, "Despite Americans' preoccupation in safeguarding their freedom from the British government, the century-long struggle between France and England for control of the North American continent, which was brought to an end in 1763, partook of the character of a religious crusade. Protestant England confronted Roman Catholic France in the New World, and the English colonists regarded their victory over France as a smashing blow at popery and idolatry. But it was more than a triumph for Protestantism. It was a victory over absolute government as well as priestcraft. The Reverend Mr. Mayhew of Boston declared that popery and civil liberty were irreconcilable. Hence, Roman Catholicism must be destroyed in order to make the New World safe for the rights of man." To the American colonists, the result of the 7 Years' War represented the triumph of Protestantism, free government, and liberty, the expansion of the frontiers of freedom. Origins of the American Revolution, Chapter 2, Section 2, page 48. You simply won't find information like that in today's history textbooks. For example, Weinstein and Rubel's popular history textbook titled The Story of America, Freedom and Crisis from Settlement to Superpower is a very popular textbook used today, even by some homeschoolers. However, they barely even discuss the French and Indian War, and they dare not mention the religious motives of the war. However, if one looks closely, one can still find a few voices today which mention Catholic imperialism as a main cause of the French and Indian War. Reluctantly, Wikipedia.org, a very pro-Catholic and anti-Protestant website in itself, actually does touch upon the possible threat, so it claims, to the English Protestants that the French Catholics posed. Their article states, "The English colonists feared papal influence in North America, New France was administered by French governors and Roman Catholic hierarchy, and missionaries such as Armand de la Ricciardi were active during this period. For the predominantly Protestant British settlers, French control over North America could have represented a threat to their religious and other freedoms provided by the English law. Notice how even Wikipedia even has to acknowledge that the Roman Catholic hierarchy and priests were running the government in Canada. Catholics have always hated the idea of a separation of church and state. The American colonists who fought and won the French and Indian War saved their land and our religious and civil liberties from the wicked Catholic priests and their minions. This is a good example of how our founding fathers, who were Protestant and Calvinistic, would not let the Pope and his minions overcome North America with their evil Catholicism. We need to remember this history lesson, and we need to look around us today, because the majority of our politicians are Catholic, and there's a majority of Catholics on the Supreme Court. So I'm telling you, it's no coincidence that our civil liberties and our religious freedom are slipping away right before our eyes. As this country becomes more Catholic, it becomes less free. And it's no coincidence either that this country was at its best when it was mainly Calvinistic. It takes a great people to make a great nation, and it takes Calvinism to make a people great.